is the 24th. And so, Katya, talk about this movie. Introduce it.
Mm.
I mean, it's a really powerful movie. I feel really sad that we didn't know about more about this. You know what I mean? This is where cinema can be great because it can teach you something and it can make you go down that rabbit hole and want
Mm.
to know more. It's about especially black troops it's about black troops that went down south to train to go into World War One, and they were in Houston, and it was Jim Crow, very racist, and having to deal with superior officers that were racist and having to endure racism in a town. And it just gets to a boiling point where these soldiers have had enough and they stand up for themselves. But you know what happens with Black people when they stand up for themselves, especially during that time when the justice system definitely wasn't looking out for them. And, you know, again, with Jim Crow, you were not considered a person. So no matter what you endured, you were coming out on the end. But I think it's very important because once again, as we are having the discussions of patriotism, what that looks like, this idea that only white people fought in these wars, which is crazy, and I really wish we would stop that narrative, shows that Black people have always fought for this country, especially when this country did not fight for them, because they believed in the ideal that if we show that we are invested in this country, then maybe they'll invest in us. And I think that's the most powerful thing that you can take away from this film, that as these men are explaining why they're doing it, and even though they have different point of entries. And I think the other part that's really important about this film is that, you know, you get to see, once again, we as Black people are not monolithic, and why some of them felt the way that they felt because of different experiences. And that's why I think we still struggle sometimes to come together, because our experience, we were not allowed to experience certain things, still some of us. So I think this film is timely, and I'm glad he made it.
One of the things that you just mentioned that really caught me is that how similar or how connected these people were, but so disconnected. So they're in the same boat. They're all in the army. They're being
Mm.
treated in the most vile and terrible way. They all want to be men and be treated like human beings, but yet these other things keep them separated as we go along. Meaning colorism, uh, be it one is in jail and had to
Educational
do
experiences.
all the types of stuff that made it say, well, we're different, when there was so much to say that, you know what, we are the same and we are in the same boat. And I think that what Wilmot did in this was to show that in a way that really made sense, actually.
No, he did a great job. The thing that I like most about the 24th, and the thing that I like most that Kevin Willmont did with this film, is he exercised cinematic patience. Because you would think like a lot of filmmakers would have rushed to the climax, which is the confrontation between the black soldiers and the white police. But he took it was a very and the pacing was good. A lot of times when you say a film is deliberate, you think slow and boring, but that's not true in this case. I like the fact that he took his time. We got to understand the nuance of the lead character, which was portrayed by Trey Byers. You got to know who he was. You learned about his background. You understood his motivation. And he did a brilliant job of recreating the environment and the atmosphere so you could get a sense of what these soldiers were going through and their interactions with the Houston Police Department and the people in town and their superior officers. He just does a great job with the pacing. And even though some of the dialogue sounded a little bit too contemporary for me, he still did a good job of utilizing dialogue to set the tone and keep the story moving forward without rushing it or beating you over the head. Like a lot of times filmmakers will take a topic and they beat you over the head. He just let it sort of naturally unfold. And I thought he did a great job because he just stumbled across a photograph of the courtroom and then built out the story from there. It's a really wonderful example of how to treat like an unknown sort of occurrence in history and really build it up so you have a better understanding, but also want to research it more.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a chance to talk to him and for a piece that I'm doing for an outlet, and it's what's even more mind-boggling. This occurred, but he didn't get access to any of the documents. The military was not, it did not help him, aid him in any way in bearing light to this, which goes to show you, which is another problem. And you know, as we're giving pardons to people, if we're going to give pardons to dead people, give pardons to these men and let restore their record. But I think it's also very interesting how this was really buried deep in. And kudos for him to say, no, I'm going to, most importantly, do the research, as limiting as it may have been. And I'm going to give names and I'm going to give visuals to these people, these men that have
brought
been
them to
buried.
life.
Exactly. And I agree with Sean. This is a perfect example of let the story lead you, not like, okay, people are going to get bored or whatever. No, he didn't skip the steps. And also he could have, I don't know, he could have turned this into some savior thing and left us with an amazing feeling. But no, I mean, it is a little sad. It is right. No, not a little, it's very sad, but
No, it's very
important. It's important that you get that you understand that. And again, how the past ties into the future, because look what is going on now. You know, we're still talking about the same things. And there was a report on CBS this morning where, you know, I believe it's the Secretary of the Air Force Black man talked about how he endured some of these things. He's been a lifelong officer and having to deal with people questioning his authority. So clearly there is still a lot of work to be done. And I'm glad I feel like this pandemic is really helping us to address some things. And in this way, art is helping us have these conversations. I really enjoyed this film.
This is one movie for me, though, that I wish we weren't watching at home.
Exactly. I agree. It breaks my heart.
Breaks my heart. This is that movie that I needed to see with some other people. And I'm talking about with my people. I liked so much about this, and you guys talked about many of those things. I like the fact that I got to at least understand some of the motivations of some of these characters. So some of the angst that they were having. So while they were pulling against each other and having those issues, I like the fact that he did that. What troubles me a little, and this is not on Willmont, but it just troubles me because it is what it is. Oh, somebody already said that before, right? But is that that there are going to be people who go to see this and going to believe that everything that they saw was true. Some of these characters are composite characters. It didn't happen. The end of the story, what happened in terms of the riot actually happened. But some of the stuff that Willmont had to piece together to make it a story, people will walk away thinking that white officer was exactly like that. And that always bothers me. And the reason it bothers me is because I know when I said it is what it is that people will not go and do some research afterwards, is that it will be the definitive, the word. And so that has nothing to do with Kevin Willmont, but it just is a thing that always bothers me with these kind of films, since they will stand in in history forever.
Well, I know you'll be glad to hear me say this, Reggie. This is one of the few films I've seen during the pandemic that were not grading on a pandemic curve. This film would be fantastic, like no matter when. I mean, it really is. It's a great film, and Kevin is definitely someone to watch. I mean, in many ways, he did a better job of directing this than Spike Lee did with The Five Bloods, and I love both movies. But I just thought what he did with this was just so tactful and skillful, because there's a lot that could have went wrong with this, and he mostly nailed it.
and getting back to you, I think you're talking about the Tom Hayden character, but I think what he said, his intent with that character was to show that he looks like an ally, but he wasn't willing to risk. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
Bless you, bless you.
Thank you. He was an ally, but he wasn't willing to risk his life or his security in order to stand up for these men. So it's like, I'm only willing to go that far. Do you know what I mean?
Which makes sense. That makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think it's a subject matter that we're still discussing today when we say, when we speak to our white counterparts and we say, allyship is not just saying the word diversity, which I wish we need to shout. It's short and proving. Do you know what I mean? It's you being uncomfortable. It's you willing to be uncomfortable in order to stand up for what's right. And again, I like the fact that he showed the flaws within that allyship, because, too often in these films, and this is why it's important that we're involved in these things, the white person swoops in and saves someone, and this person's survival is continuance because of the white person. And I like that he showed the cracks in this man's character. Do you know what I mean?
There's also, because there's also a great scene that I don't want to give away, but the scene actually pushes against the notion of the white savior, which is something you hardly ever see.
Yes.
I almost stood up and cheered. I'm like, oh my God, this is,
and
that was great.
Proves when we're involved and we get the eyeball and we get to have that conversation, it makes a world of difference. And it makes a world of difference because, again, we are still having this conversation, the same conversation, just in a different time. So again, I love this film. It was supposed to show at South by Southwest.
Yep.
I think, it would have helped. That festival would have helped to get a lot more buzz.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything. It's exactly what you guys talked about. We would have seen it in the theater. And, again, I hope, I'm definitely going to tell as many people to invest the money into seeing it. And hopefully it'll be one of those things when we get some type of new normal, whatever that looks like, they'll re-release it in the theaters. Whether
I hope so.
Black History
It's
Month,
smart.
whatever.
It's a smart movie. I mean, the first hour is so sneaky good for a lot. It's just
funny. That's funny,
so
Sean.
sneaky good.
That's funny. I like that. It's sneaky good because it is. It really is sneaky good. And oh man, I like a lot about this, and I know you guys talked about it, but the fact that these men were willing to die. I mean, literally, in two ways: die to fight for the country, and die to fight for themselves. It is something so moving, and the fact that I'm still learning about Black history at my age is shameful.
Me too. I knew nothing about this.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's so, this is where cinema sometimes is amazing because it highlights things that we were not taught. We have been taught this lie that we know is a lie, that our people have not been patriotic, that our people did not fight. They were just cleaning pots and pans. And I am personally tired of it. And this is a great way to say, your history lesson is full of crap. You need to fix this. And it's up to us to push back and teach our kids to know, hey, and just to see these men in uniform, or even Mikatel's character, a sergeant, when he talks about, this isn't true. Like, I was there. I fought in this conflict. All of these things are very important to see. And it's like you said, Reggie, I hope it motivates people to be curious and learn more, especially about Black soldiers in World War I.
Wow.
I also think the movie deserves some awards chatter as well. I mean, it's not a contender, but it should be in the conversation. It may not be a strong contender, but it should at least be in the conversation.
Especially for something like Independent Spirit Awards, those awards that are supposed to highlight films like this. And I hope that
should be in the
I
conversation.
don't know what campaigning is going to look like. I know these things usually need a crazy budget, but hopefully we can do our part, to push the conversation forward.
So before we move off of this, I have to ask, who did you guys like? If we're talking about awards, who did you like in this? The actor.
I personally I love the screenplay because I thought it was very well written. I like Kevin Willmont's direction. I thought it was brave. He didn't slip up. It was a great job of directing, and I like Trey Byers. I thought he was solid. He carries the movie. He made that character very interesting. He was very layered. I loved all the courtship that took. I thought it worked. I liked him a lot. I like those three elements, and the cinematography was dope.
The cinematography
Absolutely.
was really good.
Definitely the screenplay. You know, and I definitely am glad that Trey did this part because this man cannot go down for Empire.
No, thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
I know that people love that show, but I don't look at the show and go, "All this talent is better than this freaking show."
Right. Great point.
Yeah. Okay.
He's good in the movie. He's real. Dude, he's really good in the movie, man. He's every bit as good as Denzel Washington was as Trip, you know.
Yeah, it is. And again,
very
so again, Trey, fingers crossed, friend. You get some better parts.
He's really good.
Very good in this movie, and so, like you said, fingers crossed. So, I'm thinking that you guys saying this is like a must-see movie.
100%. 100%. 100%.
So if you thinking about seeing that other thing, pay this, be in the house, get the family, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll put it this way: this is the first must see of the pandemic. This is the first must see of the year. I don't think I've really said anything as a must see. There are a couple of movies I saw that haven't been released that are really good, and I don't really like to promote movies that the general public doesn't have access to.
Right.
But in terms of movies that the general public can actually go and see right now, this is the first true must see of 2020 for me, in my opinion. For that one.
I agree. I think there's always, I keep saying this, the one good thing about this pandemic, these smaller films that would normally get overlooked and lost in the shuffle. You know what I mean? They are getting the attention that they deserve. Because we all would have been on the hype machine, right?
Yep.
And this would have gotten like this paragraph while we talking about how awful the blow up stuff is, you know.
Although this movie might have had a fighting chance if the festivals were allowed to happen, but we'll never, like I said, all bets off the table, we'll never know because this is such a different and strange year. We'll never know. But that's why we're here, Reggie. Go see this movie, people. Please go see this movie.